If you look around and reflect on all the people you know, you'll quickly realize just how prevalent anxiety really is. Just how many people say that they frequently get panic attacks or anxiety attacks, and they take prescription medication. It was very surprising when I started to recognize and become aware of this, all the people that are experiencing this. And it's no wonder, because in North America, 1 out of every 4 people experience very high levels of anxiety on a regular basis. So now, stress happens when we're in a situation that makes us nervous, of course, like when we're public speaking or face to face with our crush or an authority figure. And the same response also happens when we're very angry or very afraid. The body responds to different stress triggers in relatively the same way. The sympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for the fight or flight response, engages by circulating hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Like all illnesses and disorders, ongoing anxiety doesn't occur for no reason, though. Minor levels of occasional anxiety and nervousness is, of course, something that we all experience. That's just part of what it means to be human. But when we find ourselves undergoing stress for extended periods of time, like every other day or almost every day for weeks on end or months, then what happens is we start straining the body's nervous system, and that eventually wears it down. It wears down the adrenal glands and some other functions. When this happens, we experience post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. So in other words, it tends to be that trauma is the root cause of chronic anxiety, including those anxiety attacks that we get, and that under more normal, healthier bodily circumstances, when we have better health, we actually aren't as prone to anxiety attacks or panic attacks. Even when we do get nervous as usual, it doesn't swell up into or progressively expand into the severity of an anxiety attack, because the nervous system is functioning properly, normally. So if you're finding that you get anxious easier than you used to, you have trouble falling asleep all the time, maybe you have poor digestion, you always are bloated and burping a lot, even after small meals, and you regularly experience panic attacks, so you're very prone to them, a little bit of nervousness can easily escalate into an anxiety attack, then it's probably not just the case that you're, a sensitive person. More often than not, there was a period in your life, weeks or months or years, when you had underwent a lot of stress, and there was some damage, some chronic damage that was done to your nervous system. Actually, another symptom that I'll mention is being depressed. Some people, all of a sudden, they've just developed some depression. They don't really know where it came from sometimes, and it's ongoing, and it tends to affect, I shouldn't say tends to, but sometimes it affects their appetite. So they're just finding that for some reason they're not very hungry anymore. They just don't want to eat as much. They can't finish their meals. So that's another nervous system problem in this context. So, this traumatic phase could have been a really bad breakup phase with somebody, even a high school breakup. Sometimes those are the worst because we're not as mature, so it just feels much more painful to us. And or it could have been narcissistic abuse or domestic abuse in the family. And we went through a period where we were just angry all the time, every day, day in, day out, or we were afraid a lot of the time. We were really anxious. We were having arguments. We always knew we had to deal with something very difficult or uncomfortable, like when we had to deal with a bully at school every day who was in part of some of our same classes, or an ex-partner. So post-traumatic stress is as common as weeds, And what happens to the body is that it struggles to relax and idle itself down from that high performance, high stress state. So when the body is chronically stressed like that, it's using up more of its minerals and resources and its vitamins that it needs to in order to maintain that healthy nervous system health. Namely B vitamins, magnesium, potassium, calcium, zinc, vitamin C. So here are some remedies. First and foremost, the evidence step is to learn to keep yourself relaxed all the time. This channel has a number of videos that explain practices that are conducive to this, which can be found in my playlist Meditation, in particular, and the primary teachings. Now, the next step is to cure the cause of anxiety by rebuilding the nervous system, by reinvigorating our body with vitamins and minerals, supplementing with these things. So here's a list of some of the best supplements you can take for healing your nervous system. There's magnesium, which comes in many different forms, but some good kinds are malate or bisglycinate, or just glycinate. And your daily dose for women, it's 310 milligrams about, and for men, it's 400 milligrams. And it works pretty quickly. It absorbs quite quickly. So you only need about 100 or 200 milligrams for short-term anxiety relief. It does relax you pretty noticeably and surprisingly. So you don't need your whole dose in one. You can take a couple of these and split it throughout the day. It's good to have it when you need it. And same thing with potassium too. You can feel noticeably relaxed when you take potassium. Usually you have to eat it though, because they don't have good supplementary versions of this, because it's kind of dangerous to take, synthesized potassium. So you can get it from bananas, lots of things. Avocados, bananas is a really good source. Coconut water is a great source too. You just, even one tall can of coconut water gives you plenty of potassium. Women need 2,600 milligrams of potassium. Men need 34 milligrams. And vitamin C is excellent for your kidneys and adrenals. They use up the vitamin C the most. But even just having 500 to 1,000 milligrams per day is excellent. And you probably don't want to go much more than that, because you've been putting a lot of stress in your adrenal glands this whole time anyway. And actually vitamin C is a stimulant to some extent. A very good form of it is calcium ascorbate. So it's not the acid form, but the calcium form, because it's a mineral. And it's a more real, authentic version of vitamin C. And then if you can get the kind that is liposomal, I believe it's called, it's related to fat, lipo, it absorbs much better. So that would be the best thing for anxiety and healing the adrenal glands. So over the long term, these minerals can help repair your body, but they can be also very effective short term too. A lot of them, they kick in after a few minutes, magnesium, potassium especially, and you can feel the effects of relaxation very quickly. Try combining the ingredients in a smoothie using a cup of spinach, an avocado, a banana, and a cup of coconut water to get your potassium. You could even add, crack open a powdered magnesium, or just crack open a capsule of magnesium and mix it in. You can even put your vitamin C in there too, put everything in there, and that'll be your one of the most powerful, effective anxiety smoothies for the day. However, when you're experiencing really intense anxiety, it's overwhelming, and you're on the verge of having a panic attack or an anxiety attack, more powerful supplements are needed, right? You need something that can work immediately and that'll just really shut that system down. bring it under control. And then you need supplements like amino acids or like certain really powerful herbs. And some of the best things you could take, is GABA for your brain, especially when your brain is cycling through anxious thoughts. If you have that tendency, it's either, racing thoughts that the world's going to end, essentially, or, catastrophizing thoughts and imagery. Or you have that kind of feeling of tunnel vision where you start just zooming into the moment and there's just this intensity of perception, and that is becoming more and more intense. Your neurons are firing like crazy when this is happening. So the amino acids like GABA, or I think L-theanine, but GABA is a really effective one. Those will just immediately inhibit those neurotransmitters from firing, and that'll stop the racing brain. And you can take at least 100 milligrams to get any effect. But, for a panic attack, you'll probably want 200 or I guess like 500. And that's really good for the moment. And then I find from experience, maybe it'll last like half an hour, and then the anxiety can rise again. So I like to combine this with something that's longer lasting and really puts you out for a while. And valerian root is a very strong, like plant herb that can just basically it's good for putting you to sleep. It's good as a sleeping pill, but it also just relaxes your body, so it makes you very slow and sluggish. But it's what you need when you're having a panic attack to immediately calm down, because that anxiety is experienced everywhere. It's not just in your head. Like your body is. Sometimes the body is the worst symptom, where it's just shaking and you don't feel good. You want their body to calm down. You want that energy to go down into the ground instead of being trapped in your torso or your chest or something. And then Passionflower also works, lemon balm extract. And these all have some side effects when you take them in high doses because they're so powerful. But when you dose it right, they're very effective. The GABA, the amino acids aren't as bad. They don't really have side effects. The supplements don't really, because they're just found in foods. But the plants are very powerful, right? So these ingredients are very good at curing the symptoms in short term. Not as effective at repairing. They're not really responsible for repairing your body long term, though. So I'm giving you both short and long term solutions here. GABA works primarily on the brain, as I mentioned, slows the activity of those neurotransmitters. So at the same time, the muscles get less tense when we take the really, really good herbal powders. And then now, it shouldn't come to as a surprise that some supplements are designed to promote sleep. So those sleeping pills, there are certain sleeping supplements that you can use as anxiety supplements, frankly. Because mainly what I look for is, does it have melatonin? Because if it does, then that's the one that's more responsible for the sleep hormone, which you don't want when you're awake. But if it doesn't have as much melatonin, then it's just acting like an anxiety drug, right? And actually, kava kava is another one that apparently works. I haven't had much effect from it, but it's worth mentioning. And so a very potent product that is a sleeping supplement that I really like for anxiety as well is Ortho Sleep. Because unlike many anxiety supplements, which only contain amino acids or just have one ingredient, Ortho Sleep has everything that I mentioned. It contains almost everything you need and to find for these anxiety supplements, or in these anxiety supplements. The herbs work on the body to relax the body. The amino acids work on the brain. There is a little bit of melatonin, but because it's so strong, you won't need a full dose of this stuff, and so you won't actually get very much melatonin anyway. And that's why I use it for anxiety. So, melatonin is a hormone that resets your circadian rhythm. But with the amount that the person needs to take for anxiety, I mean, chances are you're not going to have more than the full melatonin dose in that supplement. So it'll have almost no effect. The product recommends to take 2 capsules before bed, 1 to 2, but this is a enormous amount actually for an average sized person, because it is so powerful, especially if you've never taken this stuff. If you're experiencing a panic attack or something, a 150-pound person would only need between 1/3 and 3/4 of the capsule. So typically I take half of 1 capsule. I don't take 2 capsules. And if you're a bit bigger, or your anxiety attack is more severe, then go ahead, take 1 full capsule. That's all you'll need, and then that's only half of the melatonin that's in there. So combining herbs with amino acids like GABA is a really effective thing to do, and it's safe. So as I said, many herbs that relieve anxiety also cause gastrointestinal upset. So if that happens, it helps to drink a lot of milk or something thick, or to have, or at least just take this with like a meal, a small meal or something. Now I'm going to get into coping with anxiety. The Buddha said all stress comes from attachment. We tend to get anxious because we're attached to our self-image, and we want to please people in various ways, like by not making mistakes, or not disappointing others when we disagree or we don't like something, or not acting awkwardly. But we also get attached to outcomes, like whether or not a date or surgery will go well. Sometimes it's the symptoms of anxiety itself that we fear, because they can become so crippling. Symptoms like nausea or fainting. So here are some cognitive reframing tips. Some of them are surprisingly effective. One of the most effective solutions I found is the paradoxical intent. And this is a concept that was first advocated by Austrian physicist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl. His suggestion was to stop trying to control your anxiety altogether, and to even attempt to wish for the bad thing to happen or to make your anxiety worse. And since his time, numerous variations of this approach have been adopted by different therapists. It works because since it's so difficult to calm down the panicking mind, it's much easier and more effective to just completely surrender to it, to surrender to the anxiety and let it run its course. And by letting go of this, or like this, you actually begin to relax. So I've personally found this to be one of the most effective solutions. It's reverse psychology. Most people have to try very hard to control and limit their anxiety with breathing techniques and affirmations, but even though those techniques can work, I mean, it takes a tremendous amount of willpower to push through these anxiety attacks and really bring them down just by your concentration and your focus and your breathing. And, sometimes you try too hard and it just gets worse because you're basically stimulating yourself with that concentration. You're not actually letting go of any attachment. The attachment is still there, and that's making you more stressed. So, trying to turn off the amygdala in the brain when you're in a state of fear is like controlling a heavy and stubborn animal. If you incessantly try to tame a wild animal, it just becomes more wild. So notice the anxiety, recognize it, and it will run its course. And you have to be kind of, you have to try to be more okay with the outcomes of your anxiety and to not worry about it so much. So letting go of the attachment to control is what actually gives us control. And so the way to do this is you stop thinking, stop analyzing. Panic attacks generally set off when we see or think about a particular trigger. The impression comes into our mind, such as the realization that we'll be trapped in a certain situation. It just dawns us that we're going to be here for a while and there's no way out, or we have to be here. There are people who are waiting for us, for a period of time. And then, so that realization dawns on us, begin to analyze it, we think about it. Next thing we know, we can't take our attention off of that idea. And it's the trigger. So how do you stop thinking when the mind is so used to it, though? Well, the way to stop thinking is fairly easy. You do it through mindfulness. You have to bring your attention to the present moment, right? When you're mindful, it's always a present act. You don't want to be mindful of the future or the past, because that's contemplation. That's more of a meditation. And we're often anxious about the future, or we get stressed over the past. We get angry or resentful about the past. So get yourself out of your head and become present, right? When you're practicing mindfulness, you're not supposed to be in your head. You have to be in the now. You want to be aware of what's happening right now. So if there are thoughts in your mind and images, instead of trying to stop those, you want to direct your attention away from them into the now. And it can be a pretty visual thing, just noticing your surroundings. I find that's very helpful. So you bring your attention back to yourself and your environment instead of in your head, instead of your imagination. And so immediately when you do this, you will stop thinking and just keep kind of looking around, observing the outer world more so than what's in your head, and still aware of yourself existing. Now, the next solution that helps tremendously is preparing, and maybe I should have mentioned this first, because this is what you do before something happens. You prepare for it. And what do we prepare? Whatever we can. I mean, whatever we need. You might want to prepare responses to people. If you like to say certain things around people to please them, or to or if you want things to say when you want to get out of a situation, you want excuses to leave a room or something, and you'd want to prepare some certain kinds of responses, like recovery lines or routines and escape plans. If you like to be on top of things and always want to do or say the right thing around people, then just prepare yourself for this. Practice and write down whatever comebacks or recovery responses or closing lines or excuses, so that you'll always know what to say and how to leave stressful situations. Another thing is try not to worry about your anxiety or anything else really, because especially petty things like the little awkward things you might say around people, or what you're wearing, or things that are less likely to happen, like the worst case scenarios, right? If it's less likely to happen, then don't worry about it. In other words, you might need to try to take things less seriously, right? I mean, this relates to this method of the then what process, which was, I guess, more or less invented or adopted by David Hawkins. And his process would be to ask, well, if that bad thing happens, then what? Okay, so then it becomes like this, and then what? And then this happens, then what? And that then what is basically asking yourself, okay, so that happens, so what? Right? You're basically saying, so what? What's the worst thing about it? Who cares, right? Is it really that bad? Then what happens? then what happens? And often what we find is that nothing really bad in many situations that we worry about, there isn't really any serious detrimental consequence. It's just maybe little petty things that we're awkward about, that we just care too much about. We get just consumed in our worry, and we don't realize that maybe it's not such a big deal. So in a lot of cases, a lot of times we don't actually really need to worry about stuff because there aren't any real threats or dangers. So that's the then what process. Another thing is to have options. So what if the situation or person doesn't turn out? Is it the end of the world? If you're nervous on a date or something, you have to ask yourself if it's the end of the world. I mean, if you don't have options for the thing, then when you don't have options, you get attached. When you get attached, you get stressed, right? So when you have options, you're not attached. And you don't get as stressed, right? You don't stress over a date when you know that there are like 10 people that you're interested in. But of course, there's a lot of stress, high stress situation when that one date or that one job is the only thing that you like, that you want, that's at stake. It's not a good place to be. You need options in life. The last thing, I think is the last point, is to have fun. It's likely that you've been so focused on performing. A lot of people with anxiety tend to be kind of perfectionist, people pleaser. They want to perform well. They want to function normally around people. But then sometimes you forget, the point of quality person-to-person social interactions, which is to have fun and enjoy each other's company and connect with each other. It's a very normal thing, a normal human experience to socialize with other people. We're not asocial creatures. So why become so anxious? Because we just found ourselves in this lifestyle where we can't really socialize as much. But it's such a normal, natural thing, I should say, and a very natural thing to socialize with people. It shouldn't be awkward. It's a normal human function. It's become awkward because we don't practice a lot and our lifestyle isn't conducive anymore with, solo jobs and, certain careers that we have. So, you want to focus on that warmth that you get from being with another person and connecting with them instead of focusing on being perfect and performing around people. And then most important of all is to practice. So you'll be surprised just how much improvement you can make overcoming anxiety and getting used to stressful environments just by taking small but progressively bigger steps regularly. A job interview can be very scary. It makes you very nervous. But of course, after you have a few, the more you have, the much easier it is for you. You get so used to it. And everything in life is kind of like that. And in a lot of cases, we can take smaller steps, and it's easier to take smaller steps and progressing them more. You do one thing, and that's kind of challenging. And then, after doing that, you just take it to the next step. You do something that's a little bit similar, but you add more to it, right? Like with talking to people, making, like if you're trying to make friends, like out on the street at certain events, first you go to the event, you don't talk to anybody. And then the next thing is you talk to one person and you use like an opener. And then the third thing is to use a bridge or something so that you can keep the conversation going. And then the final thing is, getting contact information. And that's just an example of like making friends, right? But a lot of things we can work this way where we take it in smaller steps, and it's easier doing it that way. And that's a kind of an exposure therapy, but not so extreme where you just immediately jump into the hardest thing, which is just going to overwhelm you or traumatize you. So that's basically everything I can give you on this topic of anxiety. There's a lot of stuff you can do for it. So take advantage of that and you will make some improvements.